Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would sit down and do a video for you guys and gals. Well, let me get a sip of my water first. Get my radio voice going and let's talk about this. All right. So, I've tried to make videos explaining to people that carbohydrates themselves do not contribute to insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. And when you bring that up, people say, but if you eat high carbs all the time, you're going to have high elevated insulin levels, and the high elevated insulin levels will cause this. But here's the problem: that none of that is actually true. In other words, you shouldn't have high insulin levels from eating carbohydrates. If you do, you already have insulin resistance. Okay, and that's the point I want to make here. People who have a healthy pancreas, people who have a healthy insulin sensitivity, all these things, don't get massively elevated insulin just because they ate white rice all day long. Okay? Right? You take a really starchy carb like that, that's a high glycemic index carb, white rice, white potatoes. Let's say you ate those as most of your calories every day. If you have not already developed disease, you will not see elevated insulin levels from this. Your insulin levels will not spike, like people like to say in the industry. They're not going to spike. They're not going to go way up and stay up. That's not how it works. That doesn't happen in healthy people. So if that is happening and someone says, oh, my insulin spikes from doing this, well, you need to get to a medical doctor. You are sick. You're probably really obese, unless you have caused damage to your body with certain combinations of PEDs that cause this. Okay? You're probably obese. You probably have fatty liver already. This is not normal. So then someone says that, well, I'd like to spike my insulin levels post-workout. You can't. Only fat people or people who have type 2 diabetes get that. That doesn't happen to normal, healthy people. If you're lean and lifting weights, that you can't spike your insulin levels by eating carbohydrates. And that's what people don't get. So when they bring up this false premise, their assumption is that a healthy person will have this response and eventually get there. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in the lab. It doesn't happen in the epidemiology. This is a complete myth. People with a healthy, normal metabolic function don't have the elevated insulin. And we need to be clear on that. Right? That's the problem. It's what else have you done to cause it? Number one on the list of being obese. So when people say these things, oh, well, this is what causes the obese. No, it probably isn't. Unless you have a medical condition that created insulin resistance, or you were taking a medication that causes insulin resistance, this is not how you got obese. You probably got obese before. That's what caused the biggest factor in the insulin resistance. So we need to be clear there. And for most people, losing weight, people say you can't because you've already got the insulin. No, you can. You just got to be really strict. It is harder. It's way harder. It's harder mentally, psychologically, appetite-wise. Medically, technically, from a technical perspective, it's not hard. You just only have to eat what you're supposed to eat, nothing more, nothing less. Technically, it's very easy to reverse that and to lose the weight. Problem is psychologically, mentally, hormonally, your brain's not going to want you to eat that way. So that's the problem. So then you get people, well, I can't live without this food or that. And it's like, well, that's you do realize that's disease speaking, right? That's not your treating yourself right. That's not about balanced living or anything else. That is a mental issue, and it's probably a physical issue to where you're craving foods and hungry because you're insulin resistant, because your overeating has put you in this situation. And now that overeating could be due to a bad relationship with food. It could be due to trauma. It could be due to all these things. There's a lot of things that go into being obese. There's a lot. And it's not purely about willpower. And I am always sympathetic to that fact. I'm someone who used to be over 100 pounds overweight. I get it. Mine was trauma-based. So I totally understand. But the fact of the matter is, the process itself is simple. So the obesity is the number one cause. So then what happens with the rest of diet? Not all diet is equal. Normal carbohydrates don't cause any insulin resistance. Example, white rice does not contribute to insulin resistance at all. Populations that eat mostly white rice as a staple calorie every day, their rates of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes is nearly zero. So we need to be clear on that. What foods contribute? This is not subject to debate. This is in the metabolic ward when people are fed large amounts of food and then they measure the liver response, they measure the effects on insulin resistance. We know what foods contribute the most. Number one, saturated fat. Top of the list. If you wish to debate this, I'm sorry. There are hundreds of studies. There's metabolic ward studies to call you a moron. There's no point in debating this. Unless you have hard data to contradict all of it, and you can explain why all this data exists. Like, that's the problem when you say I have data to counter something. Well, if you got 27 studies showing one thing and you come up with 2 saying something different, you have to explain why the other 27 are wrong, how they mismeasured. If you can't do that, you have no debate. We're done. Shut up. You have nothing. You have to be able to explain, well, the doctors who did this were evil and they work for Cthulhu. And, you're going to have an answer as to why the data shows this. Even if it's something crazy, you better have something or else you lose by default. You automatically lose the debate because you have to explain it. Just like when people bring up that one meta-analysis, it's totally explainable on the other end. It was paid for by meat and pork companies, like beef and pork companies literally paid for the study. Well, that's why it contradicts all the other data. You have financial bias. But enormous financial bias. So again, we could fall over to, it's paid propaganda. But when that's not the case, then you come over and you look at the data, it's overwhelming. Next behind that, number 2, refined fructose. Refined fructose. That is all refined sugars. All of them. I need to do a separate video on that, by the way. This whole insane idea that high fructose corn syrup is somehow worse than table sugar and that table sugar is a better alternative. No. I'm just going to call it like it is. If you consume table sugar in large quantities every day, that you have to have it every day, you don't care about your health at all. Don't tell me you care about your health. You're lying. You're lying to me. You're lying to yourself. That's it. Full stop. I'm just going to call you on that. Shut up. Stop lying to yourself. You don't care about your health if you eat table sugar regularly. Let's just be honest. I'm going to go on a limb and say if you eat butter every day, you don't care about yourself. Shut up. It's not a health food. You don't care about your health at all. Just admit it. Like, we don't need to have that conversation. Just admit it, move on. Admit you hate yourself. Admit that you don't care if you die of a heart attack or diabetes. Just call it like it is. Just be honest. See, it's so much easier if you do that. Then you got to figure out why you hate yourself. But that's a whole nother topic. But over to the point. These foods this is not the cause of insulin resistance. It's not eating carbohydrate. In fact, people with healthy metabolic function, especially if they lift weights, their daily insulin output, even eating white rice every day, is oftentimes lower than the average person on a ketogenic diet. That's hard for people to reconcile. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.